All right, so what do we have to do to actually grow a tea plant in a container? So right here I have a tea plant. I've pulled out and you can see all the nice pretty roots that are there. So these are going to continue to become more and more and more until it just pushes all the dirt away. So you want a pot that's big enough for you to actually be able to have a good enough root system for your tea plant. We usually generally say you want to have at least about a 3-gallon pot if you're going to use a pot. So you can be bigger if you want to, perfectly fine. Tea plant is one of the plants that does not care about being pot bound. So all you have to do is once all of these roots fill up and they fill your pot out and they push all this nice pretty soil out, you'll take your plant out of the pot. You'll trim all of these roots back, so you'll just cut it back down, put it back in the pot, repot it with new dirt, and it will be fine. Now, if you want it to grow into a bush, you're going to need to prune it and everything while it's in the pot as well. And it'll bush out like a nice little hedge bush. Or if you want it to be more of a tree type, just let it continue to grow up and trim it off in different spots as you want it, so that it doesn't get too tall. Tea plants will grow into trees if you allow them. So they'll get to be about 30 feet tall. So if you're keeping them in the house, then you're going to need to prune them. The other thing about keeping them in the house is you're going to need to at least 3 times a day spritz them with water. They are tropical plants. Inside is not very humid. They need the humidity or you will kill them. So spritz them with water at least 3 times a day. And if you notice that they're getting a little dry, like if it's really dry in your house for some reason, you have the heat on in the winter, anything like that, you may have to spritz them a little bit more. But at least 3 times a day, no less. Now when it comes to watering your plants, you're going to need to use acidic water. You also want an acidic soil, which if it's not really acidic, as you water it with the acidic water, it will actually acidify that soil as well. So you can take a gallon of water, squeeze the juice of 1 lemon into that water, and use that to water your plants. It will put it at the right pH. So as far as the watering of that goes as well, so to make up your solution, so you're going to mix the juice of 1 lemon with a gallon of water. You're going to use that water until it is gone, and then you will make up another gallon of water with another lemon. Or if you're using something else to acidify, you just make it up the one time until it's gone, and then you'll make another batch. You can also use, there's aluminum sulfates and all of that kind of stuff you can buy, and you may only need like a teaspoon or something like that per gallon of water. It really just depends. It's just the lemon is the easiest way for me to teach people how to do it to begin with. So this plant we'll put back in its little bag right here for now. And it will get dealt with later. So, one other thing that we need to talk about when it comes to actually container growing. So, tea plants like all types of sun. So, complete shade, full sun, part sun, all of that kind of stuff. Now, singularly by themselves, they don't have any other protection. So you will need to protect them in the winter, especially in a container, because it will freeze that pot if you get really cold. So you're going to need to actually bring it in and not leave it outside. That's where we have the most problems, is in our nursery, because all of this is elevated, and that way they can drain really well. And in the winter, when we freeze, we do have to be careful if it's going to be frozen for, a week or something. If it's just a freeze at night and then it warms back up the next day, that's not a big deal. I'm talking about long freezes here. So if you're going to freeze for more than just a night, then you'll need to bring your tea plant in. You also need to make sure that it will drain through that pot or container that you're using very well, because it does not like to sit in water, wants it to flush through and go away. Same thing as if you're planting it in the ground. So make sure you have the containers that have the holes in the bottom to allow for drainage. Put rocks in the bottom of your container, and that'll will keep the soil from actually stopping them up, and that way all the water will just flush through the pot and the tea will be happy. So how often do you actually water your tea plant? So tea requires roughly about 1 inch of rain a week. So you need to give them what 1 inch of rain a week would be. So in a pot, that's kind of hard to determine. So you want to wet it down, fairly moist. Let it almost completely dry before you add water again. Tea actually will look the same if you're overwatering or underwatering. They wilt. So you'll have a plant that looks wilty, your leaves are all facing down, and you're like, oh, I need to water it, and you'll pour more water on it, and guess what? It doesn't change it. And you're like, well, what am I doing to my plant? You're drowning it. So be careful with tea plants. Stick your finger in the soil, even the top. The top looks like it's dry, so you're going to water it some more. Well, that's not necessarily the fact. Take your finger and stick it down in that dirt, and if it's moist, then you don't need to water. If it's dry as you're pushing your finger all the way into the soil, add more water. And you do that as it's needed. Generally speaking, it's about once or twice a week. And that's pretty much everything there is to... And that is pretty much everything there is to actually growing a tea plant in a container.